So there's a nightmare scenario that we do need to speak about here. So as you guys know, superdelegates used to be on the first ballot, and this was the most infuriating thing as somebody who first got into politics, just a couple months really before that election started. And so, I was watching the election as it was going down, and, in the car listening to the radio, and the radio guy says the delegate count, and it's like Hillary Clinton, 5 trillion delegates, Bernie Sanders, 60. And it's like, dude, are you freaking kidding me? And then, because they're including the superdelegate count, even though the superdelegates don't even vote until the convention, so it's disingenuous to include them in there. And Bernie only had like 9, and most of the superdelegates are just congressional members from the Democratic Party. So it's like it's all the establishment people, basically. It literally is. That's why he only had like 9 out of like 630 or something. And so, luckily, and I think this had to do a lot with Nomi Kant's work, although I'm not sure exactly, but she had announced that basically the DNC was doing this pivotal policy of making it so superdelegates are on the second ballot and not the first ballot. So what that means is they don't, come into the count until there's a scenario in which there's a brokered convention, which means nobody reaches the threshold, so somebody doesn't hit the threshold, and then you have to go to a brokered situation, which is what happened last time. It's typically what usually happens, all right? Except for in sweep scenarios, and so that's a very likely scenario. And so this could be really bad if superdelegates jump in and basically override the will of the people, which is what the superdelegates exist for. Could be really bad. So Bernie Sanders sending out a warning shot.
I'm curious if you agree now, from the veil of ignorance, as a principle, would you agree with that as a principle that whoever goes in with, say, a plurality of delegates, if it's 50 to 100, that should be the nominee?
Well, I think in general, what Plouffe said is right. But I think you have to take a look at the whole nature of the campaign and a whole lot of factors within the campaign that we don't know yet. But in general, I think it is a fair statement to say that it would be very divisive. I mean, the convention would have to explain to the American people, hey, candidate X, kind of got the most votes and won the most delegates in the primary process, but we're not going to give him or her the nomination. I think that would be a very divisive moment for the Democratic Party.
Final question about some business.
So that's him there basically, giving this sort of light warning shot is essentially what he's doing. He's letting them know, like, okay, if you're going to pull this type of shit, be ready. Because what's going to end up happening if this is the case is, right? Let's hypothetically say Bernie doesn't hit that number. I don't know what the threshold number is. Honestly, I forgot. It's a pretty hefty number to get to, though, man. I don't think anybody's gotten there the past 2 times, not counting 2012, 08, and 16. Neither of them hit the margin, hit the number that was the threshold. So, it's tough. It's going to be tough. But what's going to end up happening is if Bernie has the plurality, which means not a majority over 50%, but, having the most votes. And so in this scenario, the person would have the most votes, that being Bernie Sanders. He would have more votes than anybody else in delegates, but he wouldn't hit the number. Then you go to a brokered convention, and let's say Biden and Bloomberg come together with their delegates to do their own ticket, because you can do deals like that. So my understanding is delegates are pledged upon how their voters voted for. So like a candidate's delegates in the first round are pledged. You can't do anything about that. But then once it turns into a brokered scenario, if my understanding is correct, then those delegates can do whatever they want, if my understanding is correct. And so you could have like a Biden Bloomberg team up with delegates, which would be a scary scenario. And if that is something that happens, and the superdelegates come in, the superdelegates is what overrides. So let's say superdelegates, because they're not going to Bernie. Superdelegates won't go to Bernie. And so let's say the superdelegates vote in favor of Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders, and then once the superdelegates are included, that defeats Bernie Sanders, then yeah, that's something where there's going to be riots, there's going to be a revolution. You're not like, the Democratic Party will not live to see another day. I'm certainly never voting a Democrat ever again in my life if that scenario happens. And so, while I don't think it's necessarily the most productive to talk about this right now, just because I don't really see what the point is, I think it's also a good idea to, just put the DNC on notice. Like, yo, if you want to pull these shenanigans, the most epic shenanigan of all time, be prepared for the blowback. Because I'm never voting Democrat ever again if that happens. Not even just for president. See, I'm not going to vote for any Democrat on any fucking level. Nowhere. Alright? There's going to be riots. There's going to be people protesting. It's going to get really ugly. It's going to get really bad because when you override the will of the people like that, they're not going to take very kindly to it. So Bernie's sending off a warning shot here, folks.